The desert trial killed them all, but the human dug a hole and waited. The starting gong sounded like a thrown stone hitting an empty cistern. Hollow, final. 10 figures stood at the line where red rock surrendered to the white gold dunes of Nhal. Above them, the tribunal's obsidian dais threw a knife of shade across the sand. The rules had been spoken 3 times in 3 languages. Reach the Black Spire before noon. Carry only what fits in your hands. Interference is death. The audience, thousands of Thaler with veiled faces, chanted a rhythm that sounded like wind in bone. Jace Hale, the lone human, listened to the chant like it was a weather report. He knew deserts. Not this one. No human knew Nhal, but heat wore the same face across 100 worlds. You don't fight the desert at noon, his grandmother had said over sunburned maps. You become a question the sun can't answer. The gong faded. The competitors hurled themselves at the dunes, flinging sand like bright water. A scaled Vesari sprang like a lizard across rippling crests. A war-born Kark stomped a straight path, leaving post-holes behind. Jace chose a different direction, down. He walked 20 paces off the line, past the reach of the dais's shade, and sank to his knees. He scooped with flat palms, quick and neat, slicing a trench where the sand crust broke. The top was a skillet. Beneath, the grains ran cool and damp with the memory of night. He dug to shoulder depth, angling the walls, and laid his scarf over the trench like a tent fly. Then he wriggled into his hole, face tipped to the sliver of air, and waited. The crowd laughed first, then howled. Even the tribunal's herald bared needle teeth. The human buries himself, someone jeered. A lens drone buzzed above, glassy eye staring down like a second sun. Jace closed his eyes. The sand pressed him, his heart slowed. He counted breaths. His tongue tasted salt and cloth. By the first hour the desert began to feed. Far out, the Vesari misread a ridge and plunged into a slick of powdered salt. He thrashed and stilled, a lizard caught on a plate. To the left, wind built its fist. Needle sand moved in a gray sheet, abrading everything it touched. The Kark took it like a wall takes rain, until he didn't. He turned his back to the storm and crouched, but his armor plates caught the heat like a kiln. The lens drone pulled away from Jace's hole to drink long on the spectacle of collapse. The tribunal watched from their cool stones. Counselor Sure tasted a berry from a clay dish and gestured lazily. Mark the human as forfeited, she said. He has elected the grave. Mark him waiting, said an older voice. Archjudge Mayor. His veil did not stir. The desert respects patience. Under sand, Jace adjusted his scarf with careful fingers. He'd shaped a little chimney with his palms. Through it, the breath of the world moved, slow, still cool. He pressed his forearm to the trench wall until sweat dampened the grains. He squeezed a fold of cloth against it. Drop by drop, salt water became water. He thought of the ship gully where he'd learned to wait. 2 days of dust and sun, a broken compressor, a sky like a white anvil. He'd survived then by digging and listening, feeling for hollows, for the subsurface whisper of shade. You learn to be small in big places. The storm passed. Silence fell like a blanket. The sun angled up to the pitiless place where noon turns breath into ash. A scream cut that silence in a single raw line and ended. The crowd's chant faltered, then rallied louder as if to drown it. Jace slept in pulses across the worst heat. He woke to the insect hum of a skitter. Through the slit of shade, a dream-colored beetle tumbled down the trench wall, legs milling. He pinched it behind the head, bit the thorax, sucked. Protein. Moisture. He didn't think about it. When the drum of heat slackened, when the light turned from white to brass, Jace inched his head into evening. The sky had deepened to the color of a bruise. The dunes had changed. Wind had moved whole rivers of sand around him, but his trench still held like a quiet thought. He slid free, rolled to minimize his silhouette, and propped his scarf into a rough hood. The field was a graveyard of attempts. A ribbon of Kark armor lay half-buried like a broken shell. The Vesari's tail sketched a question mark on the downwind side of a dune. Far off, something had melted and cooled into glass. Jace stood and bowed. Once deeply a private thing, and then he turned to the night. The Black Spire was a blade against the stars. He set it over his left shoulder and walked, feet finding the cool, firmer sand under the skin of the dune. He read the sky as if it were an old text. 3 bright points like a triangle, the trident, the Thaler called it. On old Earth, it would have been the summer triangle. Here it still told you where east slept. Between steps he listened. The desert sang in 1,000 small voices. Beetles, stale wind in dry grass, the hollow humph of something far underfoot. He stopped, waited. The sound came again, deeper now, hungry. A burrow. Jace crouched and began to walk like rain. Soft, spread, irregular. Then he stomped once. Sand erupted. A maw of wet glass and teeth lunged where he had been. Jace dropped to the side, pulled the knife he'd been allowed, and jammed it hard against the soft seam where mouth became throat. The creature convulsed, a rippling rope. He held until it stilled. He opened it neatly, hands steady. The desert gave if you asked in the right language. He drank from the clear sacs along the gut, gagged once, swallowed again. He cut long strips and twisted them into cords. He took the glossy scales and made a mirror. He left the rest to the beetles and the stars. He walked until dawn. The sun rose furious and clean. He stopped, dug a new hole, crawled in, and waited out the second day like the first. The tribunal's second gong, customary morning, shook the dunes. No one else moved on the field. The lens drones circled as if there were nothing left to see. When the sun slanted west again, Jace climbed from the sand and made for the spire. It grew from a black tooth into a tower, then a cliff. Its shadow ran long over the desert, and in that cool tongue lay a circle of carved stone and a single bronze bowl filled with water. He did not drink. He stood in the shadow and lifted the bowl instead, carried it back across the sand until he reached the line where obsidian met dune. The crowd shimmered in the heat like a mirage. He set the bowl down at the tribunal's feet, turned, and with his hands began to dig. He scooped until a neat pit yawned, no deeper than a grave for a small animal. He lowered the untouched water into that dark, covered it with sand, and patted the mound smooth. "The desert trial killed them," he said, voice rough but clear. "You made a game of it. You made a sprint at noon because spectacle is easier than wisdom. I dug a hole and waited. I learned from heat instead of trying to impress it. That is the only way across." The square held its breath. Wind hissed along the spire. Archjudge Mayor rose, veil lifting. "Winner," he said, and the word carried like metal struck true. "By custom you name a change." Jace looked at the mound he'd made. The others deserved better than a chant. "End it," he said. "No more noon crossings. Teach the whole. Teach the waiting. Let your children live to see their own shadows." Silence cracked. Sure began to protest, but the crowd moved first. Not with anger, but with a sound like rain starting, thousands of palms slapping sand. In the spire's shadow, the archjudge bowed. "It is ended," he said. Jace stood there, small in the great place, and for a long time did nothing at all. The sun slid. The wind shifted. And the desert, unimpressed, eternal, accepted the change the way it accepted everything, by burying it gently and waiting.